I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. If you would please stand so we can say the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Kiley, if I can ask you to lead us in the pledge.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I'm guessing, Jen, did we get confirmation from Sherry?
No, so
All
she's
right,
probably not coming.
so we're going to skip that for now. First item up on our agenda was Wednesday's pet. I don't see Ms. Stenick in the room at the moment, so I'm going to assume that we had no pet for this week, so we'll have to come back to that next month. We do have one of our favorite traditions here is to recognize certain of our citizens that have done something exceptional. And today, we are recognizing a Fairfield Woods Middle School student by the name of Cecilia C.J. Vinas for winning the 3rd Annual National Healthy Lunchtime Challenge and Kids State Dinner Contest for being recognized by President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama. We have a proclamation to read here. And this is huge, CJ. Did you do all this in your first life? I'm not going to read it all because it really is too long, CJ, but we have a proclamation of the town that describes all you've done, but I'm going to try to highlight a few of the things here for you. From the town of Fairfield, whereas the town of Fairfield proudly honors C.J. Vinas for being the only contest winner in the state of Connecticut to receive the nationwide 2014 Healthy Lunchtime Challenge and Kids State Dinner Award sponsored by the Curious and First Lady Michelle Obama as part of a Let's Move campaign which encourages the next generation of Americans. Are you feeling older, Mr. Kiley? Because I'm feeling older when I read that. Encouraging the next generation of Americans to take a leading role in combating obesity. Whereas 1,500 children and their parents entered the 2014 Healthy Lunchtime Challenge, where winners were chosen for their original recipes that demonstrated through a thorough understanding of how to cook and eat healthy and deliciously. CJ wanted to make a burger healthy. My favorite meal. So she came up with the quinoa, chicken, burgers, and kale potato chips. Her burger with kale and potato chips includes all the food groups with a spotlight on fruits and vegetables. You put fruits and vegetables in a hamburger? You're the best. My girlfriend Cheryl's going to love this. I got to get this recipe. Which make up roughly half the dish and adheres to the USDA's My Plate nutritional guidelines. Fantastic. CJ's award-winning recipe was selected by a panel of judges who chose 54 winners, one from each state, plus the District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And whereas on July 18, 2014, CJ and the other winners attended the 3rd Annual Kids State Dinner at the White House. Fantastic. CJ was filmed making her dish by Time for Kids in the coming months and will be doing service announcements with a celebrity chef. In September, CJ is doing a cooking demonstration at Yale New Haven Hospital with her winning recipe. CJ, on behalf of all of that, now therefore, I, Michael C. Tetreau, First Selectman of the town of Fairfield, do hereby proclaim August 26, 2014 as Cecilia Vinas Day throughout the town of Fairfield. Congratulations. Cecilia, if you come on up. And let's see, why don't we have you stand right over here. And we want to give you your proclamation. All right, face the camera that way. There we go. All right. It's been my dream to find a healthy hamburger. I can't tell you how much that means to me. So congratulations, and on behalf of all hamburger lovers in the country, thank you for that. And Cristin, Kevin, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would love to. I am very, very proud of you, as we all are, for what you've done. And I also really want to try your recipe, so I'd like to bring a copy of it home. I saw a copy up here. It's amazing what you've done, and food is something that's such a big part of our day-to-day lives. And thank you for your leadership and for trying that out, and congratulations.
CJ, congratulations, and thank you for representing your family and your school and your town and our state so well at the White House. Very, very proud of you. And like my colleagues, I'm very much looking forward to trying your hamburger, and maybe we can add it to the Fairfield Woods cafeteria lunch menu someday.
Oh, wow, wow.
That's
How about
All
that?
right.
I've got 2 boys at Fairfield Woods too, so I know that they would be very interested in tasting that burger.
CJ, would you like to say anything? You don't have to. But obviously, you do all your work with your hands, right? All right. Here's your proclamation. Congratulations again, and thank you for making our town proud.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I know.
Do we have copies of these?
We do. We have more up here.
Oh, good. Awesome. See, there are copies of the recipe right up here. actually.
Anybody wants one? Here we have it.
Yeah. I'm serious about trying it.
Thank you. All right.
Good.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Seriously good. I know. So good.
All right. A couple quick announcements. One, to all the animal lovers out there, Town Days are here at the Beardsley Park Zoo. On Saturday, September 6th from 10 to 4, it's going to be Fairfield Day at the zoo. Please take time to go over. It's only $5 each if you're from Fairfield. You're going to need an ID, it says. They don't trust you. So please bring your driver's license or
Just wanna
passport
verify.
or whatever else can prove you're from Fairfield, and you get in for $5. Second, as we did last meeting, I want to remind everybody about the 375th Grand Gala coming up to help us celebrate our 375th anniversary here at the town of Fairfield. It'll be on November 15th at Sacred Heart University. Tickets will be going on sale September 2nd for $150 each. It's going to be one great party. I should point out that this party is being funded, our entire celebration is being funded by sponsorship money and ticket sales. So please sign up. Stay tuned to a media channel near you that will be coming through. And we have more celebrations coming up. Wow.
Saturday night.
All right. Bridgeport Bluefish will also honor Fairfield this Saturday, 6:05 at Harbor Yard. They do a great job down there. I was at a game this weekend, which was absolutely fabulous. And I believe, are you? Are
I
you the
am.
man?
Mr. Kiley's throwing the first pitch out.
All right. Now, we have a side bet on how many bounces it takes, but he is throwing out the first pitch.
Go as the catcher.
I
All
have
right.
been taking a lot of ribbing on that from my friends about the bouncing of the ball to the plate and everything else, but we'll see how it goes.
All right. So
Great.
good luck on the first pitch there.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Moving on. Next up, as you heard at the last meeting, and as you heard on August 14th, we honored Gustave Whitehead for being first in flight and making that flight here in Fairfield. We spoke at that time about setting up a Gustave Whitehead First in Flight Advisory Committee. This is an advisory committee to the first Selectmen, and what we are trying to do is both ask for them to develop some recommendations for how best to recognize and memorialize Gustave Whitehead here in Fairfield for his contribution to flight. Because Gustave Whitehead lived in Bridgeport, actually built the plane in Bridgeport, and after Fairfield flew in Bridgeport and Stratford, we're doing this, we're also getting together with Bridgeport and Stratford and developing a Whitehead Trail to help create a greater tourist interest piece as well as to help the local economy. So we're trying to do this in conjunction with our other cities, and we think that will make it easier to publicize, promote, and get funding for this type of recognition that's important not only to our town, but our region and our state. This is a phenomenal milestone, and we want to make sure that Gustave, Whitehead, and Fairfield get their proper recognition. And to help with that, I've asked a number of folks to get involved and form a committee. Mr. Andy Koch is here in the audience. I've asked Andy to chair that committee. That will include Richard Gripko, Michael Jaley from the Fairfield Museum. The Fairfield Museum is in possession of the archives that the Gustave Whitehead research that was done by Bill O'Dwyer. So that's in their file. So that's the largest resource that documents that the first flight was made here in Fairfield. We also have Melanie Marks, who is a town historian who's done a phenomenal amount of research and has really gotten hands-on in this. Adam Mocciolo from Pullman Conley. Adam has been involved in helping pull together the three towns and help us get started on building the Whitehead Trail. And Carol Way, who has been involved in looking for how we can best recognize Gustave Whitehead on our own, and we want to take advantage of her energy and experience in terms of bringing her into committee. So I'm very excited about this group. And Andy, I want to thank you for taking up the charge and look forward to talking some more. We'll have a chance to talk a little bit more, and I want to introduce you to some of the players in Bridgeport and Stratford so you at least get to know what they're up to and can start that communication. But again, thank you very much for volunteering and heading this group up.
Thank you, Mike.
Next up, to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments. First, to the Fire Commission. Barbara Rifkin, Democrat, 38 Crest Terrace, for a term from 11/13 to 11/18 to fill a vacancy for Charlene Lebo, who resigned. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Any, Ms. Rifkin is here.
Mhm.
Any questions or discussion?
Just one note to tie into a later agenda item too. Ms. Rifkin has a long resume of service, and one of which was, I noted, the ACT committee, which will be, the grant will be coming up, which is now Fairfield Cares. So I know that you've done many things in town and will continue to serve with distinction. Thank you for your volunteering and for your service.
And Ms. Rifkin, I'd like to echo my fellow colleagues' comments about your many years of dedicated service to our town, and thank you for them, and wish you well on the Fire Commission. I know you'll do a great job.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out that I've had a chance to work with Ms. Rifkin, both, I think we're on the RTM at one point together back in a bit, and certainly on different projects we've worked together. And you come from a family that's made a tremendous contribution to our town, and I want to thank you for continuing that heritage. And thank you for stepping up. Any further comments or questions? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, are we ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor? Aye. Congratulations, and thank you. Next up, to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointment to the Police Commission. Susan P. Barrett, Democrat, 122 Wilton Road, for a term of 11/09 to 11/14, to fill a vacancy created by the passing of Sid Postal. For those of you that don't know, Sid Postal is also Ms. Rifkin's father, and that was the reference I was making before. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Any comments or discussion from the board?
Sure. I'd like to thank Ms. Barrett for volunteering to be a member of our Police Commission. Your service to Fairfield goes back many years, more than I care to discuss, because I was there with you for many of them back on the Board of Finance as far back as 1997, I believe. And your dedication to our town and to our state is well documented, and I'm sure that you'll do a wonderful job for us as a police commissioner, and thank you for doing that.
Any comments?
Yes, I would echo my colleague's comments as he did the last time in terms of your long resume of service, as I said, for Ms. Rifkin as well, and it will serve you well, I know, and I appreciate as well the incredible dedication that you have to the town and to so many other organizations within it. So thank you for your willingness to serve.
And I guess I've got to say at this point that it was Ms. Barrett that got me officially involved in politics in Fairfield. Lo, so many...
Just like, oh my God. The room erupts.
Lo, so many years ago.
And all my hair was really dark naturally.
All of our hair, right?
Yeah, mine was dark then too. It doesn't quite work that way. But I just, having known Susan through the years, there are very few folks that I can think of that have made and been involved in as many different organizations, from state rep to Board of Finance, the Fire Commission, to being nominated for the Police Commission. She's been a tremendous volunteer for our community, has given a tremendous number of hours, some with recognition and many without recognition, and that's the true measure of a volunteer in that stead. I think it's certainly appropriate that you're filling postal seat on this, for given your record of service and everything that you've done along those lines. Any further comments from the board?
No.
Any comments from the public?
May I just say it all started with PAL.
Wow.
I took baton twirling lessons, and the rest is history.
That got you out in front of the parade. All right, back to the board. Are we ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor? Aye. Congratulations, Susan. And thank you. All right, item 7. Next up is to hear a report from Steve Lobdell on the economic impact of the Fairfield Half Marathon to our town. Steve, come on up. And while you're heading up, I just want to mention that this is a series of reports we've done. Is one of the benefits of being in this job is you get to see a lot of the good things that go on in town. You get to see the tremendous number of volunteers that help our town and contribute in so many ways to making our community special. It was at the half marathon I was talking with Steve for now the 3rd year in a row down there, and we started talking about the history, the involvement, the heritage of the half marathon and how much it's done. And I realized that not everybody in our town realized that. I asked Steve to come here to share his thoughts and experiences, not only with the Board of Selectmen, but our community. So, Steve, with that as an intro, I'm going to turn it over to you to give us an update on the marathon and how you're doing.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. The event goes back to 1981 when a group of firefighters got together and decided, and it was actually through Chief Dave Russell back then, to see if we could put on a road race to raise some money for the American Cancer Society. And over the years, it's just kind of grown, and things went well. And we've gone from 165 runners to close to 7,000 runners between the two events now. And this is a twofold effort to try to show some of the things that we've done over the years in an effort to give back to the community. First things first, we have great cooperation from police, fire, public works, all the department heads, and maybe it helps that the Fairfield firefighters have been the hosts for all these years, but nonetheless, it's a great town, and I'm proud to be part of that. And I just thought, after speaking with First Selectman Tetreau, that we talked about the economic impact of the event, and that I really didn't spend a lot of time doing that, but I did a little bit of research, did my Google stuff, and came back. And the first part of what I'd like to talk about briefly is a little bit about our event. We're a 501c3, and we're committed to putting on a high-quality event for runners and spectators, as well as raising funds for some great charities. Again, the Fairfield firefighters have been the hosts, and for 34 years, and our board of directors is made up entirely of the both active and retired Fairfield firefighters. Traditionally, the event is held on Saturday and Sunday, following Father's Day, and for the last 3 years, the event has gotten so large that we've put on a self-imposed limit of 5,000 entrants for the Fairfield Half Marathon. This past year, TripAdvisor named us a road race worth traveling for, the only race in Connecticut given this distinction. We are rated the #1 half marathon in Connecticut out of 21 other events, including the much larger Hartford Half Marathon. This year, 6,250 runners participated in both events combined, and people arrived from 34 states and 5 countries. Over 1,100 came in from New York, with about 500 of them coming from the via train on the Metro North. In 2013, the Hartford Marathon Foundation put on 5 different events on one Sunday last October. They had 17,000 participants. They hired a consultant firm, Witten Intelligence Company, to conduct an economic impact report. Witten has measured tourism state activities for more than a decade. They came up with a figure of $9.4 million, using a standard deviation of 1.5. Using a standard 1.5 state industry multiplier that accounts for indirect spending as money flows through the system, Witten came up with a final figure of $14.1 million in Hartford. Using those figures, we extrapolated our number of runners, and figuring that they're about 3 times larger than we are. And conservatively speaking, these figures over our weekend, we bring in several million dollars into the economy, which I think is a pretty good thing. However accurate this comparison is, there's no doubt that the Fairfield Half Marathon and 5K has a positive impact on the town. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we try to do to give back to the community that's given so much to us. Over the last 5 years, the race and its participants have raised over $2 million for charity. Much of this money comes from nonprofits such as the Hole in the Wall Gang, the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and Fairfield-based groups such as Giant Steps and the John Patrick Flanagan Foundation. Individuals also used our event to raise money. This includes fundraising for the Newtown school shootings and Hurricane Sandy relief, among others. Excuse me. In the past 2 years, we've donated $82,000 to groups such as Fisher House, Connecticut, Connecticut Disabled Vets, Bridgeport-based Homes for the Brave, and a Fairfield-based group called A Project from the Heart. The firefighters firmly believe in supporting our troops and want to continue doing everything they can for them. Some of the Fairfield groups that we've supported, and this is over 2 years, 2013 and 2014, the race has given over $120,000 back to our community. These groups are part of over 700 volunteers, which are Fairfield-based, which are mostly Fairfield-based. These are not all the donations, but I thought I'd go over a few of them. This is over a 2-year period. Fairfield YMCA, $26,500. Fairfield Ludlow and Fairfield Ward, $11,600. That $11,600 actually translates into double, because what we do is we do matching funds for the school teams. We ask them to come in, run in our race, instead of doing some other way to raise monies for whether they're going on travel or raising monies for uniforms and so forth. We match whatever they can get together. So even though I'm saying $11,600, it's nearly $23,000 back to the schools. We've worked the last 3 years now with the Fairfield Beach Residents Association, and they're responsible for bringing over 60 volunteers to come down to the beach on race day and help us out putting on the 5K. It turns into a win-win. We know that we can be a bit of a pain over 2 days. You know, we're disrupting their normal flow a little bit. So we felt that it was important to give back to them. They came in on board and basically have been fantastic working with us. So on Saturday, they come in and do everything pretty much for us, with a little bit of help. But in the last 2 years, we've donated $10,000 to them. We have over 380 Girl Scouts from 9 different troops that come in and There are about 40 of them at each water station for the half marathon. It's quite involved in, if you've been around for a while, every Girl Scout that ever lived in Fairfield has participated in this event. And so we make donations back to them. But just this past 2 years alone, we're looking at $4,500 that we give to these groups. They have a lot more fun playing around with the water than they do Girl Scout cookies. It's a fact. I know that for sure. We did matching funds with the Fairfield Theater Group for the last 2 years, and so we said every dollar up to $5,000 per year we will match, and they raised $10,000 over the last 2 years. We donated $10,000 to them. We started a benevolent fund for the Fairfield firefighters. In the last 2 years, we've given $8,000 to them. We started a scholarship fund for the Fairfield firefighters. Anyone that's a high school senior and they're Fairfield firefighters, in the last 2 years, we've given $5,000 to them. Fairfield CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. Very important to us. Huge help for us on race day, out on the course. We love this whole group. $5,000 in the last 2 years that we've helped. We know that it's tough with budgets and so forth, so if they can get a few dollars to help them out, it's great. It's important for us, for being the firefighters, both the Southport Volunteer Fire Department and the Stratfield Volunteer Fire Department. One received, over the last 2 years, $7,500, the other $7,000. Thanks to the Public Works, they've been really helpful for us for race morning and getting items down the beach. That stage goes from the Memorial Day Parade, comes down to Jennings Beach, and those kind of things really helpful to us. This past year we donated an ATV, all-terrain vehicle that they use down at Jennings Beach at a cost of around $9,900 and change. Scott could probably talk to that a little bit. You did get that. I'm kidding. The year before, we wanted to help out after Hurricane Sandy, and we noticed that although the Jennings Beach Pavilion had not been directly hit, that there was a whole section of, there's like a porch on the side and a ramp that they use. We replaced that with high-quality materials, and to the tune of about $6,600, because we get the privilege of using that area and we want to give back, and that's basically how that works. Beyond that, it's important that we help our neighbors in Bridgeport, in Westport, and in one case in Easton. In 2013, we made a $2,500 donation to the family of an Easton firefighter who died during Hurricane Sandy. I don't know if you remember that. He was on duty. In 2013 and 2014, we have donated nearly $45,000 to Bridgeport-based groups, most of which went to the following. We're always supporting the Bridgeport Hospital Burn Unit. In the last 2 years, we've given $10,000. We've Newspapers in Education, which helps the kids in schools in Bridgeport with reading. We've donated $10,000. This is a repeat from before, but under Veterans, Homes for the Brave in Bridgeport, we've donated in the last 2 years $18,000. In 2013 and 2014, we wanted a way to thank the town of Westport for giving us the privilege of using their roads and trying to minimize any disruption on a Sunday morning. But we've done a couple of things. We split the cost with the Westport Fire Department and donated half of a $13,000 ATV vehicle for their fire department that helps them get to areas that they might not be able to in storms and so forth. And this past year, we donated several high-tech night vision thermal imaging cameras at a cost of about $6,500. So these are the kind of things that we do. We want to give back to Fairfield. Fairfield's been good to us, and it's important. And we're enjoying it. We're hoping to come back again next year. Thank you.
Steve, thank you. I'm just overwhelmed with the long list of different ways that you've given back to the community, that the whole focus of this is really coming up with a way to make Fairfield special and to pay back, and I just want to thank you. That's a tremendous example of leadership in helping our town and helping our community be better. So Colleagues, would you care to say anything?
Well, I find it ironic, I got my email about my photos from the 2012 half marathon. Last chance to buy today.
Oh, no.
But I want to thank you and the firefighters, because without all of you, this wouldn't be happening. And it's really amazing. I knew some of this, but not the full extent of the kind of giving back to the community that the half marathon has allowed. And I, having been a participant in the event, can say what a tremendous positive experience it is. It's such a community builder, and then, as you're talking about today, from an economic standpoint in terms of businesses, but also then supporting so many organizations and great causes, it's really tremendous. And I know that it's an unbelievable amount of work and time that you put into it, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
Very, very much.
Thanks a lot.
Kevin?
Yes. Steve, thank you very much for the update. It was a great way for me to learn about not just your event, but how you help support the local economy with everyone that comes here and supports the restaurants and the hotels and the other businesses that benefit from that couple $3 million that come into the town. But as importantly as that is, to me, is the partnerships, as I would call them, that you've formed with all of these other agencies to provide them with additional funding and challenging the schools and the theater to go out and match the funds so that they can be doubled and mean twice as much in the end. And I think that's a great way to provide incentive and, as Mr. Tetreau mentioned, leadership that is, that this town is really, really proud of. So thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
See you next summer.
Thanks.
All right, moving on with our agenda. Next up, we were supposed to have a report from the Director of Information Technology. He's unable to be here today due to a family matter. So we'll move on to item 9. From the Director of Public Works to hear a report on the vehicle replacement plan. Mr. Michelangelo?
Thank you. Joseph Michelangelo, Director of Public Works. With me is Scott Bartlett, our Public Works Superintendent, to talk about the vehicles. The report that I distributed with the agenda pertains to our Public Works Department capital vehicles. And as the town, as you know, we define capital as anything $100,000 and above. As you recall, during the most recent budget sessions in the spring, both the operating budget and the capital budget, there was much talk about our state of our public works vehicles, what condition they were in, and it was a unprecedented request of 7 vehicles that we received through the capital budget process, not the operating budget process. But one item that came up with both this board, the Board of Finance, and the RTM was put that in context. What does that do? We understand we need the vehicles. We did receive approval for that, which we're grateful for. But give us an overall picture of how this affects the Public Works Department vehicle and what we have going forward. So what we did is, obviously, we took an inventory of what we have, our capital equipment over $100,000. There's 48 pieces of equipment in various stages, and those are made up of backhoes, loaders, sweepers, dump trucks, aerial trucks, and a few assorted construction equipment. Myself, Scott Bartlett, and Jeff Cornwall, our fleet manager, did a total review of all the equipments, their functions, what we could do, what we can't do. And one of the rules that we use, as you heard in the springtime, we put different optimal service levels on, whether it's 12 years for some vehicles, some years we push them out to 15, some vehicles we push them out to 15. And that doesn't mean that the vehicle falls off the cliff at the end of that life cycle. That's the optimum lifestyle, that's cycle. That's when we get the most use out of it. After that, we get more downtime, more maintenance time, etc. So what we've done is proposed a 5-year capital plan of purchases that'll get us to an acceptable level. And once again, not all our vehicles have to be in that optimum range. In the report I describe, and I'll use backhoes as an example, we have 4 backhoes. That's the right number for us to use. By any given condition, any given situation, we always operate 3, but at any given time, there may be a backhoe down for servicing, different repairs. So, you know, the right number is probably 3.5 or 3.6, but obviously we can't have that. So in the cases where we have 4 of something, a backhoe, a loader, a sweeper, there will always be one that's the slacker, so to speak, on the way out. So we were trying to think of what we optimally need to do our job, and then what percentage we could live with of the vehicles beyond the optimum service life. One of the flexibilities we have is because we have so many 6-wheel dump trucks, 25, we could afford to have a couple of them at the tail end of our fleet that don't need to be within our 10-year range. So in projecting our 5-year plan of vehicles we feel we need to purchase in the next 5 years, it's given in the report on page 9 of the report. And in transferring from Excel to Word, there was one in year 2016, there was one item that didn't get carried down in the total. So in year 2, that should be $994,000, which makes the total for the 5-year purchase $3,321,000. And what this does is there are 17 new vehicles in this proposed plan for the next 5 years. That's where we feel we could upgrade our fleet tremendously and also live within the financial constraints of the town. And going back to last spring, one of the things that was cited, out of the 48 pieces of equipment, we only had 13 of them within their optimum lifetime, the 12 to 15-year cycle. With the 7 new purchases, that got us up to 20. So it's still 20 out of 48 in the acceptable range. What this does, with these 17 new purchases, minus the ones that drop off, it'll bring us up to 35 vehicles within their optimum range at the end of the 5-year period. A couple of items that I'll mention, and 48 is the number we're working with. A couple of pieces of equipment that they're still useful, but for our daily operations, the way our roads have been constructed, and our roads are in good shape, so a lot of our construction work is maintaining our roads, the surface. We really don't do as much road construction as far as building roads from scratch. So currently we have a bulldozer, currently we have an excavator, currently we have a tractor-trailer cab that moves stuff around. So in this plan, we don't have any of those planned for replacement. And most likely, with our mode of operations, we'll probably go out of the business of running those vehicles. So our 48 potentially could be reduced to 45 sometime in the future, because we're not planning on replacing those either in the 5 years or possibly afterwards. And a couple other operational issues that we're examining. The 17 new vehicles that we have purchased, we show 2 sweepers being purchased in that 5-year span. We own 4 sweepers. One of the things that we're actively pursuing is to see if that is an item, at least one of them, that's best contracted out. So some mixture of owning 3, contracting out 1, owning 2, contracting, renting. So that's an area that we feel that we might be able to shave a capital purchase off in the future. In my summary, I mentioned this was the first iteration at this report. Hopefully you won't pick up any errors. There are a couple of numerical ones, so we plan to revise this in the future, but it's substantially the report that you see today, and we think we have a plan that addresses our fleet without overly taxing the future budgets.
Joe, thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mr. Michelangelo, Mr. Bartlett, thank you for being here. Appreciate the update. My first question is, can you just help me understand the schedule? You mentioned 48 units or vehicles, but there's like 54 on here. Does that exclude the ones that are labeled new?
Well,
Is that what that is?
correct. So there are some that are labeled new and there's some that are labeled going. So not all the The vehicles that are labeled new, most of them have not arrived yet. We do expect them to arrive this calendar year. So it's in a flux. So
Okay.
the ones that are on the way out the door, they're labeled going. The ones that are coming in, we've labeled new. But we wanted to show each vehicle. So that's why, for instance, even though like the aerial boom trucks, 2 is our ideal number. We show which one is going out the door and which one's coming in the door.
Oh, I see. So this schedule shows the ones that are outbound and the new ones that haven't yet arrived, and the net is 48, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. I was just doing the math. It didn't quite make sense. Okay. So that answers that question. And as far as the pricing, and I know these are estimates, and these estimates are going out 5 years, but the numbers seem very round and very similar. Like, are all the trucks really $200,000, or is that a very rough number? And are there any opportunities if you need to purchase multiple trucks of the same type in a shorter period of time? Is there any way to, capture any savings by, purchasing multiple units at the same time? It just seems kind of, I know it's round numbers, I get that, but it seems very round,
Well,
if you will.
once again, there's, in these categories, there's 8 different classes of vehicles proposed. So a lot of those you see, like the 6-wheel all season, you see the 200, well, that's basically the same truck. No, I don't think there's there's no incentive if you order 3 or 4 of these at one time. There's no savings realized through that.
There's not, even though some are coming from different manufacturers, there's no consolidation opportunities or group purchasing or anything that you could take advantage of?
Not that I've found, no.
Not that you have found.
They're basically all custom outfitted and produced trucks. You don't generally buy them off a lot. That's the
Right, well, that I knew, I just didn't know if there was any opportunities out there for us, since this looks like and back to your point about the roads do look great, and thank you guys for that, and it's good to see that, we're getting caught up on the roads, and it's really good to see that capital investment we made a few years ago is beginning to really bear fruit, and the roads do look great, so thank you. Thank you again for those efforts. It's much noticed and appreciated. So that was all I had for now, if you want to go.
Cristin?
I'd like to also thank you both for this and just consolidating. I have one question. These are the above 100,000 vehicles.
Yep.
Approximately how many do we have that are below?
Well, there are quite a bit, and I'll let Scott think about that number. Well, one thing I mentioned in the report is we split this up. That's another thing that we're working on also. So these are the capital ones. We are also working on a similar plan for under 100,000, and it's not just Public Works that's doing it. One of the things that once again from budget time, one of the things that a lot of times drives the equipment or dictates is the number of vehicles trickling down from the PD. So we're working both with our Public Works vehicles, with the police department, with the fire department, to get a comprehensive listing of vehicles under 100,000 and a similar number. What do we need to do to keep balance, whether it's 5 vehicles or 10 or 8 or 12, and that number for the total vehicles.
Vehicles under the 100,000.
Scott, you're going to need to use the mic.
Vehicles under
And
100.
if you would, we all know you, but if you could let the folks that know.
Scott
who you are.
Bartlett, Superintendent of Public Works.
Thank you.
Proud Superintendent of Public Works, I might add. And thanks for the compliments on the road, that's what I live for. Under $100,000, it's about 100 vehicles, and it sounds like this awesome number, but it's not just your standard pickups and Mason trucks or retired police cars. We have tractors that do field work. We have a bunch of attachments. We will be giving you a fine-tuned program just like this on those numbers. But we even found with some good pricing, 4 trucks came off this list and went to sub 100. Several years ago, they actually cost more for a tree box truck, not the aerial truck, but a tree box truck and liftgate trucks. Today, through better pricing, through state bids, we've gotten those off of this list and on the $100,000 list. That's why I don't have the firm number. But we will be coming forth with a program that will stipulate everything. And this never makes me popular with the men, but in fairness, we are also strongly reevaluating if we want to replace a tractor or privatize some of those activities based on labor rates and cost of equipment. So again, it's not always an easy chore from our perspective. Hard to motivate people when they think you're subbing their jobs out, but we feel our ultimate responsibility is to evaluate what's best for the town, and we're making some tough business decisions in terms of cost, manning that equipment, repairing that equipment, and where we end up in privatization. So it's one of the things we have to take a hard look at.
Okay, good.
Another question for you, and I also thank you about the roads very much on many levels. You and I have had lots of conversations about them, and this question actually relates to that as well, the street sweepers. So that kind of connects to two areas. We talk about this with the Bike and Pedestrian Committee and also with the WPCA as well, and you reference that in here in terms of keeping the streets clean. They're out on a rotating basis from April to November. How often do we have the 4 out now? And I mean, you don't see them all that often. So your thought is, again,
Your road must not be getting done, because I
Well-
get the opposite complaints when people
No,
see us. They're like, how come the sweeper's down here again? It's clean. The sweepers are manned, literally as soon as the weather breaks in the spring, we're manning them. And we will man, based on manpower, 3 sweepers daily, sweeping the entire town. That's just our routine maintenance. That means parking lots, shoulders of all the roads, and that's a 4-month process. Now what makes it a challenge is all of a sudden we want to do some road work. So if I swept Fairfield Beach Road April 15th, but now May 15th we wanted to do a process on it, a micro seal or anything else, we have to go back then and re-sweep it. And I'm sure you're wondering, well, why don't you just sweep it when you're close to the maintenance? We always take our paving list and look at where we're going to be. So we will block out the map and say, don't sweep here, because we know in 2 weeks we're going to come in here and do a road process. But many times the road process is later in the season. The average citizen doesn't want to wait. Hey, I'll be there September 1st and your road will look good for the summer. So, it's a constantly moving target, but we proudly sweep 3 sweepers, 4 months on our sweeping. Centers are done once a week, Fairfield Center every week, Southport and Grassmere every other week, so it's a fair rotation. The railroad several times a year, Board of Ed during spring breaks, but we hit it hard, and again, we've evaluated cost, but for outside contractors to bring in sweepers and sweep for their procedures actually costs more than us doing it. We have the ability, since we own the sweepers, to trigger over and do these streets before we'll do a surface on them. So, but we keep an eye on all those things for, our value moving forward.
Right. Well, thank you for that. Part of why I say that is you often hear, well, I never see, and that's part of why I said it that way, because I know that you're out there, but I appreciate the explanation and understanding, and it'll be interesting to see how that one moves forward in terms of the balance of whether we keep these vehicles and retain that ability to have that kind of flexibility.
We always are concerned that, if you live along Southport or along the coast, you might see the sweepers early in May, but if you live in Greenfield Hill, you might not see us until July.
Right.
And we have to, we are concerned about that, because from a service level, why shouldn't they get swept earlier in the season? Why should they have, a messy street from, all the debris all winter? So one of the things we're evaluating is actually privatizing the northern end. Obviously, it costs us more to go from the yard, 8 miles north than it does from the yard to, say, 2 or 3 miles north. So those are some of the things we're looking at, is privatizing just the northern section. But again, it comes with communication with the unions and people understanding that we're not out to hurt them, but we're out to do the best job we can for our citizens.
Couple quickies? Go ahead. I guess this one would be more for Mr. Tetreau. I mean, obviously, we have to go through a budget process and a capital planning process, and all of that still has to happen. But if we were to go down a path even similar to this, we would be looking at a larger than historically, approved capital outlay, much like we did this past budget year. I forget the number for this year, but it was higher than normal. So I'm thinking that's kind of what, if we were to follow the schedule, we would be looking at a few years of a higher than historically normal capital outlay for public works on vehicles over $100,000, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of where we're going. This is step one, which is kind of laying out what the department would ideally like to have, and Joe addressed it in his discussion, that this will catch us up to a point, not not 100%,
Right.
but catch us up to being reasonably behind. Would that be a way to say that? And before they say it, I will define where we are as unreasonably behind. But this is step one. We have not gone through the process of, I think my question would have been, is this in the capital plan now, has been submitted to finance? Is this in the waterfall chart as we're?
Full value.
That was my next question.
No, I know it was not included in the waterfall chart, so I know there were some questions going forward whether these were going to be indeed capital items like they were this year or
And
operating.
we still have to sit down yet on that,
Correct.
which I think we're
Okay.
scheduled tomorrow to do that. So,
Yes.
Kevin, we're right in the process of doing what you
Okay.
suggested.
Good.
So between now and the budget, we have to take a look at what this means based on what is proposed.
Mm-hmm,
How much of this is in capital?
right.
Do we put together a catch-up program in non-recurring? Last year really was a bridge.
Right.
It brought us from being very far behind to putting together a plan. It didn't get us all the way back, just to be clear, it did not get us all the way back.
Correct.
We knew we needed to replace the oldest piece of equipment first, and nothing was going to change that, so we replaced those last year.
Got it.
We knew we had a lot more of that to do, but we didn't have a plan in place to support asking for more money.
Right.
So we started with this. We will now take this and working with Joe and Scott, integrate this into the waterfall chart and then integrate this into the budget process based on everything else that's going on. But ideally, when we ask our department heads to put together a plan, and again, I do have to say that I'm impressed again, and Scott, every time you get up there and talk, Joe, you the same, I learn a little bit more about your thought process and what I'm going to call the different moving pieces. They're just, it's like playing chess, only instead of the 64 pieces, you've got 264 pieces on the board, and you seem to do a good job of kind of keeping them all in the boxes where they should be. So thank you for doing that. But in this case, now we have to go back and look at the financial impact
Right.
and what takes place. If we could do this with the money, if Joe wins the lottery and wants to share it with the town, certainly we'd be welcome to that, but we could also commit to this plan a lot quicker. But I think we have to start with this. I think this lays it out. So this helps us make the right decisions. This helps us make informed decisions. And this gives us a great foundation for building the budget on in terms of where we go.
Good. And my last question is kind of a dovetail to that, is the financial impact of this. Typically, we don't look at leasing vehicles, and we haven't done that for a long time. And it very well may make 0 sense, but because of the magnitude of this and the fact that we're looking to do a lot of catch-up within 1 or 5 or 6 years, right? I wonder if it makes sense, at least for the finance department, to take a look at the economic impact of, if there even is an option out there where somebody would lease vehicles of these types for periods of time that made sense, at prices that might be affordable, without knowing any of the data behind it. I wonder, since this is a large project and we're looking at it now, is there any financial impact? Is there a positive financial impact to maybe looking at an alternative way to finance these vehicles, or is that just not an option?
Well, to answer your question, a lot of these vehicles, they do in fact lease, so it's worth, some evaluation. In the past, when we've looked at it, it didn't make sense to
I
do it.
remember that.
But it doesn't mean things certainly change. Joe just connected us with his former town, who actually rented a sweeper, and I did some quick numbers based on their rental and their time frame, and their cost with repairs was $30,000. Then I took like a bid that we would, if I subbed out the sweeping, that
Sure.
came in at $60,000. But then I had to look at my cost of the sweeper and my operator.
Absolutely.
And where I was, they got a deal and a half. Now, I'm not sure if a contractor's going to bid. I mean, Fairfield tends to get higher prices. I'm not sure what Cheshire ends up getting or not getting, but it was certainly an eye-opener for me, and I actually wrote back, Joe saw the email,
Right.
I wrote back to the guy and showed him like all my thoughts on it, but we're gonna certainly compare those things.
Right, I mean, and thank you for that, and I recall things not being feasible in the past for various reasons, but since it's a big need and a big project and a big number, it's worth taking a peek at it, just so we'll know.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
All right. Any further questions?
No,
Okay.
good.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate the work, and I think
Thank
this
you.
is a great foundation going into budget season. Next up, also from the Director of Public Works, item 10, to hear a report on the Water Pollution Control Authority's capital plan. That's something we've been talking to the WPC CA about for a couple of years now. Joe, thank you for working with them to get this done, and please take us through it.
Sure. One thing that we mentioned the waterfall schedule previously, where our capital projects will fall in line as the years go by. That's been done for town departments for the last several years, so every town department submits their ideas to get the ball rolling, what they have planned, what year it falls. A lot of the out years are placeholders, so ideally the decision makers could, see the projects coming down the line and make better choices. That's one thing that was not done for the WPCA. The WPCA is, as you know, a standalone budget, somewhat separate from the town operating budget. So, it was never included on a waterfall schedule. So one of the request was to include it. Myself and wastewater superintendent Mike Fenoya went through some of our larger items in town, and these are the infrastructures. And basically, it's the items on our project list are basically our wastewater treatment plant.
Joe, just before we go too much farther, because you touched on the waterfall chart, and I just want to speak to my two colleagues here. What we're looking at with respect to the WPCA is literally treating it as a separate organization, so that rather than taking these capital items and throwing them into our normal debt service and normal waterfall chart, look at keeping these separate, still using a waterfall chart of sorts, but actually, rather than charging these within the tax rate, keep them out of the tax rate and have them fall within the sewer rate or the sewer charges that are paid, since these are specifically for people that are on sewers. So that would be basically having the WPCA operate on that basis. So that's the, if you will, the projection we're going forward with at this point to see how that works out. This, again, is step one in that. We still have to ripple this out in terms of where we are. I believe that WPCA started looking at the rates they charge in terms of what's taking place and comparing that to other towns and looking at their financial obligations. But we are reaching the point, as you can see from this, where we're starting to get some higher obligations in terms of repair and refurbishment and replacement and expansion in some cases of our sewer system. So, but that is just some background.
Thank you.
Joe.
So myself and our wastewater superintendent, Mike Fenoya, gave an overview on our system. And our system is basically 200 miles of pipe scattered throughout the sewered areas, mainly in the center line of the road. Sometimes they have to go in backyards to accomplish the flow. Where there's a low-lying area where the pipe can't flow by gravity, there's a pump station to lift it up over the hills. So we have 8 pump stations. Everything goes down to our wastewater treatment plant on One Rod Highway, where it's treated, and it's pretty sophisticated, involved process. And it's discharged to the Long Island Sound about a half mile off our shore. So our system was designed very well, and conceptually it was designed very well. It was designed in the late 40s, and I'll use the example, the town of Fairfield, they got the whole town to flow down to one point via 8 pump stations. So everything was laid out pretty good. And I'll use Branford, where I lived previous to this, as an example. Branford, which probably has a third of our population, probably has like 48 pump stations. So they sort of took the, not the easy way out, but they went for the quicker type systems, get the pipe in the ground, push it along, as opposed to the master plan. So the master plan of our sewer system, over a half century ago was pretty good the way they set it up and got it to one point. There are some numbers in here, about 17,000 users to the system, which is probably around 80% of our population, our residential homes. Basically, all our commercial and industrial is served by sanitary sewers. Going back once again to the last budget season, one of the things I mentioned was the order of magnitude of what it costs to upgrade the sanitary sewer system and wastewater treatment plant, and members of the Board of Finance went into a bit of a shock. But these are heavy investments, and Fairfield is no different than similar sized towns like Stratford or Milford or Norwalk, or half the size of Westport. But these are large capital piece of equipment, wastewater treatment plant. And then the report, I said, the order of magnitude for any town in Connecticut, whether it's Fairfield or Glastonbury or Wethersfield, the money you spent, the value of the wastewater treatment plant is probably about the size of a high school. It's in that order of magnitude. It's big money equipment, hundreds of pumps down there, high-tech equipment. So what me and Mike Fenoya did was outline, put some conceptual numbers on all of our big-ticket items that we see coming down the line. We have them projected for a 15-year period. One of the a concurrent process that we're going through with our wastewater treatment plant, we're at the point with our capacity at the plant where we're mandated to do a facilities plan. And the wastewater industry, they call it a facilities plan. But basically, it's a comprehensive plan of development for our system. See what the needs of the town are, what the flow is going to be, what future discharge regulations are going to be, and what adjustments we have to make to get there. So as part of that facilities planning process, the numbers on the one of the goals of that, the final page here, has our capital projects. The first year or so, we've been identifying projects pretty precise, so we have some good information on those. As I said, the other ones are conceptuals. But one of the goals of the facilities plan is to refine these numbers, get more accurate costs, get more accurate scope, accurate time frames, whether, pump station that we think is going to be ready for repair in 8 years, whether that's correct, or maybe we have to move it up or slide it back or increase or decrease the cost by 20 or 30%. But that's part of the exercise that we're entering into with our facilities planning process. And one of the things I mentioned, it is going to be a challenge paying for the system by the user-based approach, but one of the reasons why WPCAs were established in the first place was to provide adequate funding to treat wastewater, not just in Fairfield, but all over Connecticut and the nation, because it was not getting accomplished. It would always fall victim to education funding and public safety funding and alike. So that's why it was separated probably around 2 or 3 decades ago to create separate funds. That's the mode of operations for these type systems all over the place, and it's a challenge, but hopefully this will get us pointed in the right direction.
Good. Any questions?
Please. Mr. Michelangelo, thank you very much. I just have one kind of big picture conceptual question. We've been doing this for well over 50 years, and we've been doing a great job at it. But we've done it mainly, I believe for the most part, all in-house for all these decades, correct?
No, so this type facilities plan, there was the last one was done by Stearns and Wheeler. It was done probably 17 years ago.
Okay.
So it's about a phone book size document, and that's your Bible. So that was pretty successful, lays out your groundwork for the future. And we do in-house, we do all of our, basically all of the running of the plant. We operate our own plant. But basically the design of pump stations is outside of the capability of any town. The design of wastewater treatment plants itself, I don't know any in-house operation that does it. Even New York City DEP that runs their wastewater plants, it's high tech, and it's civil engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. It involves all the disciplines. Wastewater treatment plant itself has biology, chemistry involved. You literally have PhDs working on some of these treatment systems.
Right, and I think you've touched on my question, which is, as you start looking at a 15-year capital plan, you're looking globally at what you're doing and how you're doing it and what you need to do, what years to get there in the end, right, and to be successful. Do you envision going outside to like an industry or a national type of consultant, or industry expert to give you either whether it's a global view or an alternative view to look at new technologies, or is that all considered here?
Well, for our-
Just looking at everything, not any one particular item.
Yeah. For our facilities planning process, which is our, our roadmap going forward, the WPCA went through a selection process. We issued a request for qualifications. We had probably about 9 or 10 firms submit, and it was shortlisted to 4 firms. And of the 4 firms, they were, some of the firms, well, they, like AECOM is the world's largest engineering firm, 50,000 employees submitted for this. The other 3 were also large ones.
Right.
WPCA went through the selection process, 5-member committee, 3 town staff, 2 WPCA members. And Wright Pierce was the consultant that was selected to do this. They're northeast based. I wouldn't say exclusively New England. I think they go into New York and some of the Mid-Atlantic. But they were the firm that we felt best met our needs. So currently what we're doing for the facilities plan, we're working on finalizing the scope of service, finalizing the fee proposal. You notice with the asterisk, this is one of those exercises that DEP funds heavily. They actually pay for 55% of it. So one of the things that they have to sign off on it. So even though we probably selected them in July, we're probably ready to enter into agreement, because we're dealing with Connecticut Deep too. We're probably about a month away before we sign the papers, award the project, and get going on it in earnest. But it was a pretty involved and open process to select that consultant.
Thank you for explaining that further. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Kristen?
I don't, actually. We were here last night with the WPCA, and just for the public's sake, as our charter requires one of the selectmen to sit on the WPCA, which just shows how important this work is,
Right.
and just something we take for granted, as I think Mike has said, Mike Fenoya, that if it's something people are paying attention to, it's a problem, and the fact that you guys are doing such an amazing job with that work is tremendous. So we have a great group of very dedicated authority members. There are going to be a lot of conversations going forward for certain, but I'm grateful for this document and having that out for all the bodies to be able to take a look at. It's really helpful.
Yes, Joe, thank you. And I know we've been talking over the past year and getting you working with Bob Mayer and Finance and putting together both a financial plan for WPC as well as this capital plan. And again, I think this document starts that process and serves as a very good foundation for moving forward and helping us work with WPCA literally to meet their obligations. Is in essence, they're a small town in terms of what they're doing and managing our work here. So,
And Mr. Mayor did attend our meeting last night, explained some of the ramifications of these, in the future going forward. So I think that was well beyond what I could do, and I think the authority appreciated it also.
Excellent.
Joe, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, Fairfield Cares Community Coalition. This requires Board of Finance and RTM approval. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Fairfield Cares Community Coalition. Resolved that funds be transferred from an increase in grant revenue in the amount of $5,675 to cover the cost of programs sponsored by Fairfield Cares Community Coalition, Fairfield's local prevention council, which develops alcohol, tobacco, and other drug abuse prevention and suicide prevention initiatives, and further resolved that the first selectman is authorized to make, execute, and approve on behalf of the town of Fairfield any and all contracts or amendments thereof with the Regional Youth Adult Substance Abuse Project, also known as RIASAP. These costs are 100% reimbursable by the 7/1/14 to 8/30/15 share of the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services grant to local provincial councils administered by RIASAP. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All right. Do we have someone here to present?
I'm going to join Wendy, actually.
All right.
Stand together. So I'm here today with 2 hats on, obviously. I am the co-chair with Wendy Bentavegna of Fairfield Cares, and we are going to just present together. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background. Wendy's going to share a little bit of the accomplishments and goals moving forward, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit about the grant. So just by way of background, it's this sheet right here. It's the front, and it's similar to last year, actually, when we came before the bodies. Actually, I think Wendy wasn't here with me last year in spirit. But as I mentioned previously, when Ms. Rifkin was here, ACT was our former designated local prevention council. And in 2012, we became one coalition, forming together folks from ACT and Fairfield Cares Alcohol and Health Task Force. And since then have been working together. And together are Fairfield Cares Community Coalition. The one thing I want to point out in terms of funding, it comes from the same sources in the past. It comes from DEMIS and then through RIASAP, who we work in strong partnership with. And we as a town support them. They certainly are providing a tremendous amount of support through Fairfield Cares. The grant is really focused on alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. And we have to use 2 of 6 prevention strategies: information dissemination, education, community-based processes, alternatives, problem identification and referral, or environmental. So I'm going to turn it over to Wendy so she can tell you a little bit about how we've been doing some of that and how then we'll tie it back into this year's grant.
Thank you. So, as Cristin mentioned, as a local prevention council, we are the town body responsible for coordinating prevention programming around teen alcohol and other drug use. We also strive as a coalition to go beyond that and promote overall wellness within the community and healthy lifestyles and choices. Our committee, when we became the local prevention council, we structured the committee into subcommittees based on some areas of focus. We've got substance abuse prevention, wellness, which is primarily suicide prevention at the moment, research, and publicity. Regarding substance abuse, I'm just going to kind of summarize some of the activities. There is a full list in your packet. We are on year 5 of, because this is carried over from when it was just Fairfield Cares, year 5 of the Freshman Forum in the high schools, which is a forum on underage drinking for students, 9th grade students and their parents. We've supported a 2-year social norms campaign, giving students permission not to drink. It's okay. That's the positive aspect of it. Prom year postcards for 4 years, going out to junior and senior parents around prom time, reminding them to have clear and consistent messaging around alcohol use and of the social host laws, which had changed, and letting them know about that. We've introduced a program for seniors, a transition to high school, from high school to college. We had teen stress in the teenage brain at both high schools. Marijuana and prescription drugs was a new thing that we just had this past year. In addition to a panel and panel Q&A and a presentation, we produced pamphlet sheets of information sheets to disseminate to the public. And posters, actually in collaboration with Fairfield Police Department, we produced posters publicizing the medication drop box that is at Fairfield Police Department, which people are not aware of. It's a 24/7 anonymous, safe way to dispose of medication. And that is a collaborative effort, and that's gotten out there. With regard to wellness, suicide prevention, as Cristin mentioned, we got a mini grant. We have 4 of our members are trained as trainers. Cristin and I are 2 of them. We have trained, QPR, stands for Question, Persuade, Refer. It is a gatekeeper training for the average layperson. Signs to recognize, things that you can do to, potentially get someone who might be in a contemplating suicide or in a depressed state the help they might need, to recognize signs. We are trained as trainers. We have hosted QPR training for all certified staff at both high schools. We've delivered QPR to PTA at one of the high schools here. I've also done it in Westport. We've got 40 community stakeholders trained in Connect Suicide training, which is it's another form of training. It's a little more in depth. It shares a lot with the QPR, but it also is designed to, literally connect the various people from school to police to, agencies to parents to everyone who might be involved in recognizing signs, because individually it's harder to see. So that's a intensive program that we've done for 40 people. There are other things. We've just recently reached out to the middle school PTA as well as the leadership team to try and get in touch with them and make them aware of who Fairfield Cares is and what resources we can offer them. We are pretty well known at the high schools, but we're working our way into the middle schools and down, because we know that the prevention message really needs to start earlier. Research, most recently we just finished our second ever parent survey, as well as the ongoing implementation of the RIASAP Youth Survey. Those are critical pieces of information. We collect and analyze the data in coordination with RIASAP and Positive Directions, which is a prevention agency out of Westport. Mike was so gracious to dance for us last year. You had dark hair then, too.
Duly noted.
I recall that. Anyway, the research results we get, the information we gather and analyze is what guides our prevention efforts and all the programming efforts. Without the research, we would be guessing.
Right.
And it provides invaluable data. Publicity, again, we've publicized the Dropbox. We have also taken those medication Dropbox ads and have just produced ad notes, those annoying things that you find on the front of your paper that you can't read the headline.
Mm-hmm.
They will be coming out the first and third Fridays in September, and again in October, again with information about the Dropbox at the police department. We've just gotten a logo. We had no success, a little technologically challenged, in putting it on here, but we do have a Fairfield Cares Community Coalition logo that we were fortunate enough to have input from high school students in the development of, and then it was taken to another graphic designer to kind of come to life. So that was great. We have just come up with a Facebook page, and we hope to do more. We really want to, we've accomplished a lot. We're growing. We, like the gentleman who spoke about the half marathon, we're very fortunate to have a lot of cooperation and collaboration with different people in the town. We've got police department, clergy, prevention services, law enforcement, I said that, other youth-serving organizations, town, school, parents, all working with us. But we really need to get the word out, because we, moving forward, really want people to use us as a resource where any kind of prevention conversations can focus. We want to be able to provide resources, and we have hopes of getting a website and moving forward, but we feel we've come a long way.
That's a perfect segue into the grant funding itself. We've done a lot with a very small grant, actually, a very minimal amount of funds, and that speaks to the volunteer commitment that Wendy and so many others have made. We meet here and we don't fit around this table. We've had tremendous commitment. This year, the proposal is, and was agreed upon at the July 22nd meeting of the coalition, to spend the funds in the following way. It's on the back side of the sheet that has the resolution. Tobacco prevention activities for $1,000. This is required by the grant. We are actually required to spend $1,000 of these funds. This year we are going to be partnering with the Smoke Stoppers program from St. Vincent's Swim Across the Sound to bring programming into 7th and 12th grade and to help support the programming that exists already. In the substance abuse and prevention efforts, school partnerships for $2,500. Again, as Wendy said, we are going to expand efforts to commit to supporting the middle schools, because what we know is talk early and talk often. And the conversations may be different in middle school, but they absolutely need to be happening to encourage those healthy choices. So we are making headway there and have had great support from the administrative leadership team, meaning the school personnel, as well as PTAs, as Wendy said. Community prevention activities, we've designated $1,500 for 2 different programs. Though they may look similar in the write-up, One Parent Connect through Fairfield Counseling Services, which would be a program we've done already, and it's an informal kind of group that would allow parents to come in with a master level mental health clinician and an intern. And then the other would be new for us, it's creating lasting family connections. that would be something that families would sign up to and commit to, both of which are about establishing patterns of interaction between parents and children, talking about child development, and helping parents understand how they can most effectively assist their children and navigate through those years when kids are more at risk, or times when kids are at risk. The last amount is publicity for $675, which is the balance. We want to continue to get the word out, like Wendy said, constructing a website, creating brochures, using that logo to do some branding. Again, this is an all-volunteer organization, but the three things that I guess I'd like to leave you with, and to reiterate a couple of things that we've said. We are the designated local prevention council. Our goal is to be the place where the community comes to have the prevention conversations, whether it's everything from what we know about prescription drug abuse to alcohol and substance abuse, tobacco, that we have tremendous resources at the table and we are creating those connections. So that is what we're trying to do. And this year we are going to focus particularly on alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, prescription drug, and suicide prevention as well. So we hope that you'll support this grant, and certainly happy to take questions as well.
Kevin, any questions?
No questions, but just a big thank you for everything you do and your entire coalition. And thank you for helping the young people in our community make, positive choices in their lives. And I also wanted to thank you for addressing the younger students, pushing your messaging down to the 6th and 7th and 8th graders. I think that's very important, and that's a great step in this process. Is the younger you get to them, the better choices they will be making. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I concur with what Kevin had to say. Also, how many years has this grant been coming through the town at this point?
This, I believe, actually, it was 1988 when the program started, if I'm not mistaken. That's the last data that I have available.
Wow.
So.
And we've had a grant, Positive Directions partnered with Fairfield Cares I think it really began in like 2010. We have a grant from the state of Connecticut on alcohol prevention. And so some of that money obviously has helped with some of the efforts. But that grant only goes on so long. And the RIASAP funds are critical to, the three bodies work very well together. We work well with RIASAP, all three organizations, but their funds are critical to moving forward.
Yeah, I just was trying to get back to, I think for most of the time I've been on voting boards, be it RTM, Board of Finance, or here, on an annual basis, this has come through, and I was just trying to get a flavor for kind of how long, because that's a lot of good work and a lot of instruction and prevention that's gone on over that time period. So, again, I want to concur with what Kevin said, and thank you.
Thank you.
To both of you on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Thanks, I know, the two hats.
Yep.
I should add, and I really want to give kudos to Wendy and the entire coalition, that RIASAP actually recognized the coalition's efforts with an award recently for the coalition as a whole, which just speaks to the way that everyone's working together.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So
And without Kristen, it
Teamwork.
is a
Teamwork.
joint partnership, and I'm not sure how she keeps it all straight, but
Coming back.
kudos to her.
All
Thank
right,
you.
now, Jen, did we move this?
Let me check. Yes, you
Yes,
did.
Oh, we did.
Yep.
Okay, and then you got up to talk, because I remember you getting up, but just wasn't quite sure when that happened in the conversation.
Great.
So it's back to us. Any further discussion?
Mm-mm.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, and thank you. Next up, the tax collector. To consider and act upon tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector and the amount recommended. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion or amendments?
Yes. If we can amend this to add, at the end of the sentence, the amount $3,397.49.
I'll take that as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further comment on the amendment and the amendment only? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion the item as amended stands before us. Any further discussion on the item?
No.
Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Tax collector item is done. Next up is from the town attorney is a private executive session. I believe that we'll need a few-minute pause here to allow some of our camera equipment to leave the room. So let's take a few-minute break, and then we'll come back in. Yes, we do. And then we'll take those one at a time. We aim to please, Jen.